gentlemen, welcome to another week and another episode of the Blerdcalibur podcast, where I'm your host, Sen. I'm here to talk about video games and entertainment in the form of DC and Marvel. Now, we are going to talk video games first, because I need to talk about Microsoft. So, Microsoft and Sony, technically Microsoft and Sony are two sides of the same stupid ass coin. And I can't stand either of them. And what I mean by that is 5 years ago, between 5 and 10 years ago, there was a decision made by both Sony and Microsoft that they were going to gobble up as many studios as possible. And you saw a lot of these indie studios be swallowed up by corporate Sony and put to work to make indie games for PlayStation Plus. Microsoft followed suit. Microsoft went out and purchased a ton of indie developers and put them to work making games that were first party for the Xbox. Where Sony saw a level of success, which we are currently seeing now in the form of Helldivers, which is another conversation we're going to have directly after this. What we saw from Microsoft is loss. And what I mean by loss is that for as many studios as Microsoft has essentially gobbled up over the years, there has been a low return in the form of functional, successful games. And Redfall is another example of this, because Microsoft purchased ZeniMax Studios, which is the people who make the Elder Scrolls. Now, when this purchase essentially occurred, the idea was that we're going to be first party for the Elder Scrolls. Of course, it's going to drop on PC as well. We're also going to own all of these smaller studios that are essentially owned by ZeniMax, because we purchased the big umbrella, so everything underneath the big umbrella is also ours. We're going to put you guys to work to create games. One of the games that was created that was considered to be first party was Redfall. Redfall essentially came out and it flopped. It was not good. Combat was not good. Story was not good. The way in which the game handled and played was also not good. It was plagued by a ton of issues and was received kind of lukewarm by the Xbox and also by the PC community. Now, the idea behind this is that and I hate this mentality that studios essentially come in to now, because back in the day, oh my god, I'm old. Back in my day, you would have a game studio that would work on the game. They would finish the game. They would have a bunch of testers come in trying to find as many bugs or as many issues as possible. They would ship that game. The game would be printed on a disc, sent to GameStop or your nearest gaming mom and pop store. You would purchase the game. You would play the game, and you would have fun. Maybe you would run into a bug that missed Q&A or missed testing. Maybe you would run into a situation where if you do a certain thing, it may corrupt your save. But gamers were really good at going online to sites like GameFAQs or something else and basically helping each other to avoid that type of situation from occurring. Example, Star Ocean, not till the end of time, because that was the third one. It was Star Ocean 4. Maybe that was a New Frontier. There was a bug that when you went back to Earth and you were doing something in the prison, if you talked to a certain NPC who was next to the save node and then went to save without waiting for that guy to finish his entire spiel, you would corrupt your save file. That happened to me. I went online and figured it out. These days, that situation no longer happens. Why? Because you can now push through patches and updates in order to fix those type of bugs that you run into. This has caused game studios to enter this weird mentality of, let's just ship our game in this piece of shit state, and over the next 6 months we'll put out patches and updates and fixes to basically address all of the issues that the game is currently having. Now, I would not have a problem with this mentality if it was done in good faith. If you release the game and something catastrophic that you did not foresee occurs, and then you rush to basically handle that situation in maybe the first few days or maybe the first week. That is not how game studios essentially do things these days. They are pushed, they are crunched, and they have deadlines to meet. And whatever state the game is in, they ship, and they see if they can gobble up as many people purchasing the game. Because to my knowledge, I do not believe that the refund process on the Xbox Marketplace is as easy as the refund process on Steam. Once you purchase the game, you're basically stuck with a lemon when you were expecting a golden egg. And over the next 6 months to a year, the studio will silently work on the game and push out updates and get the game into the state it's supposed to be in when it was supposed to essentially drop, which is what essentially happened here with Redfall. Now, that has happened with a bunch of games. I can't name them off the top of my head, but I'm fairly certain that you know a few games that have come out in absolutely sorry and horrible states that you were like, wow, this is absolutely crazy. I can't believe I wasted my fucking money. And then 8 months down the line, you hear about we made the big return update for you guys to be able to come back and sit down and play the game and enjoy the game and blah, blah, blah bullshit. Why wasn't this shit fixed and handled on drop, on release? Because you had a deadline, so you pushed it out in any fucking state and figured you were going to spin the block and essentially fix it later on. So the studio who makes Redfall, which is Arcane Austin, was one of the studios that was essentially cut during the Bethesda cuts that Marvel essentially went for. Now, Redfall's previous update will be its last as we end all development of the game. The game and its servers will remain online for players to enjoy and will provide make-good offers to players who purchase the Hero DLC. The mention of the make good relates to a now canceled DLC some players had brought up front when Redfall went on sale last year. Redfall's 1-year anniversary came and went on May 2nd, 2024, with no word from publisher Bethesda. Despite the widely panned game receiving no updates in 6 months, owners of the $100 edition still waiting additional content. Fans who bought the $100 bite back edition of Redfall, despite the base game being available day one at no additional cost to Xbox Game Pass subscribers, we're hoping for an announcement regarding their missing downloadable content as an anniversary celebration. No mention came from developer Arcane, Bethesda, or larger owner Xbox, however, leaving November 2023's patch notes as the last communication on the missing content. We're continuing development of the Hero Pass, and we're excited to share more about Redfall's new heroes and other updates later this year. There's a tweet from Arcane Studios which basically goes over exactly the same thing. However, the more interesting thing is that there was an industry insider who, it's not in this article, but there was an industry insider talking about the fact that Arcane was essentially working on this big update for Redfall that was going to fix a lot of the issues, introduce new systems, bring about the missing content, everything that the people who actually enjoyed the game, because even bad games have fans, were essentially looking for, and Microsoft basically came in and pulled the plug. Now, I feel as though this is once again a underlying sickness that is indicative to today's gaming that I've mentioned about before, which is the idea that you can release a game, you can have all these promises in the game, because a few years ago, I would say about 15 years ago, the worst thing a game studio could do to you is bait and switch you with a trailer. Like, you remember when the Watch Dogs trailer came out and it was all high definition rain that's landing on the leather coat as he's walking through the city in New York, and he enters into the club and everybody's dancing and the people are reacting to him as he walks through, and he's adjusting his body to make sure he doesn't touch anyone, and you can see all this information going on screen, and it looks so dynamic and so fantastic. Yeah, and then when the game came out, none of that shit was in there. The worst thing we had to deal with 15 years ago was that, which were trailers that were basically these supercharged slices of the game that wasn't indicative of the overall gameplay experience that people were going to end up having when they purchased the game. That is no longer the case. We currently live in a situation where a company like Microsoft can have Arcane Austin make all of these promises. DLC, new characters, battle pass, skins, new weapons, new enemy types, new locations to visit, and updated battling system, new items, yada yada yada, blah blah blah, all this bullshit. And instead of either having that in the game at launch or releasing it to see exactly, whether or not it's enough to bring people back to play the game, they're just like, nah, pull the plug. You're not making us money. We thought you were going to be Fortnite. You're not Fortnite. Go ahead, pull the plug. Get us out of here. Go ahead and save my money. What about your staff? I don't give a shit about your staff. They're all fired. Tell them that they can go get new jobs. Or if anything, I'm working on a new Halo game. Fire half your staff and send the other half of your staff over to 343 Industries to start working on this new Halo game. Because we're only interested in, big projects that are gonna make us a lot of fucking money. It's scummy. It's a very, very scummy and unfortunate type of culture that currently exists in gaming, which is these major companies gobble up these smaller developers. They put these developers to work in hopes that they're going to release some type of killer app, some type of game that's going to be as popular and as big as Fortnite, that's going to have Travis Scott dropping in from the skies as a fucking bronze god. And when they're unable to do that, and then those studios are like, hey, all we need is 6 months in order to turn this ship around, they're like, nah, you guys are fired. Get out of here. Like, you didn't strike gold. You didn't strike gold when we needed you to strike gold. So I no longer need you anymore. I no longer need you anymore at all. But there's also an argument to be made, or a line to be pissed off about, in regards to how digital content is essentially handled. Because you had people who purchase a $100 pass of this game. And when the $100 pass of this game says that, hey, we're going to have new characters, new weapons, new locations, a battle pass, these type of systems we're going to put in place for you, blah, 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 and then you don't deliver that, then it's a scam. There's a legal term to it, where essentially you made promises, I purchased your product off of those promises, and now that it is time for me to essentially make my for you to deliver to me what you promised, you're like, yeah, I couldn't deliver that. Best I can do is 40%. That opens you up to lawsuits. That makes you liable to lawsuits, because that's a social contract, not even a social contract. That's a contract that you entered into with a person. I give you the funds, you give me a product, but instead of giving me the 100% product, you gave me 40%. But then you can tie me down in EULA agreements and all that type of crap about the fact that, oh, well, the content was in development, and we have the rights to basically shut down our servers and deny you access to a game that you purchased, or change our decision on making the content because it's our intellectual property, and blah, blah, blah. It's this weird, scummy gray area where companies like Microsoft and Sony really don't have to, they're not regulated in any way, shape, or form. They can do whatever the fuck they want. Because tomorrow Microsoft can completely deny the people who purchased the $100 edition of this game access to the game. They could say, okay, we're not going forward with anything in regards to Redfall. We're shutting down the service tomorrow, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're just basically your ass out. You're ass out in the middle of fucking nowhere, living off of promises that are never going to be fucking delivered.